Lupe Velas. Before Sofia Vergara, before Salma Hayek, there was Lupe Velas, the original fiery Latina who set Hollywood ablaze in the 1920s and 30s. Known for her impeccable comedic timing, she headlined the wildly popular Mexican Spitfire films, where she played the bold, unpredictable Carmelita Fuentes. But Velas wasn't just playing a role, she was redefining what it meant to be a Latina in Hollywood. In an industry that loved to box actors into stereotypes, she refused to be tamed, demanding roles that showcased her talent beyond the cliches. Behind the scenes, she was just as unpredictable. Co-star Leon Errol once said, "Lupe Velas was a firecracker, and she had a great sense of humor." That fire extended beyond comedy. She was one of the few Latina actresses of her time who openly challenged Hollywood's rigid expectations. Her life ended in tragedy in 1944, sparking countless myths and urban legends, but her impact on representation in film remains undeniable. Today, as Hollywood continues to grapple with diversity and authentic storytelling, Lupe's legacy is more relevant than ever. She was a trailblazer who fought for visibility in an era that rarely made space for women like her, and for that she deserves to be remembered. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo, at the absolute peak of stardom, shockingly walked away from Hollywood forever. In the roaring 20s and 30s, she was the face of cinematic allure, a Swedish import with an icy, enigmatic presence that made audiences obsessed. Films like Camille and Ninotchka showcased her unparalleled ability to convey deep emotion with just a glance. But in 1941, at only 35 years old, she vanished from Hollywood, never returning to the screen. No farewell tour, no dramatic exit, just silence. And that silence became part of her legend. Garbo's retreat from fame wasn't just about privacy, it was a statement. In an industry that devoured its stars, she refused to be consumed. She lived the rest of her life in near total seclusion, occasionally spotted strolling through New York, always maintaining her mystique. Even today, her influence lingers. The concept of the mysterious star, the one who remains just out of reach, owes everything to Garbo. And while modern celebrities struggle to escape the relentless eye of social media, she proved that true legends don't need to chase the spotlight. They simply walk away and the world never stops watching. Benny Goodman. Benny Goodman wasn't just the king of swing, he was a revolutionary force who changed the face of American music. In the racially segregated world of the 1930s, jazz was thriving, but it was still largely divided along color lines. Goodman shattered that barrier by hiring black musicians like Teddy Wilson, Lionel Hampton, and Charlie Christian, making him one of the first white bandleaders to integrate his orchestra. This wasn't just a bold move, it was a seismic shift in the music industry, challenging the status quo and paving the way for future generations of artists. But Goodman didn't stop there. His groundbreaking Carnegie Hall concert in January of 1938 became a defining moment in jazz history. It was the first time jazz was performed in one of the most prestigious classical music venues in the world, legitimizing the genre in the eyes of critics and audiences alike. The concert was a roaring success, proving that jazz wasn't just nightclub entertainment, it was an art form worthy of the grandest stages. And while Goodman's clarinet mastery made him a household name, his true legacy lies in his fearless push for racial integration in music. Without him, the path for artists like Duke Ellington, Count Basie, and even later legends like Quincy Jones might have been much harder. His influence still resonates today, reminding us that music has the power to break down walls and unite people across all divides. Jean Harlow. Before Marilyn Monroe, before the term blonde bombshell became shorthand for Hollywood seduction, there was Jean Harlow. With her platinum waves and smoldering gaze, she didn't just play the siren, she defined it. In the pre-code era of the early 1930s, when Hollywood was still figuring out where to draw the line, Harlow was already crossing it. She wasn't just beautiful, she was bold, exuding a raw, unapologetic confidence that made audiences lean in. Films like Red Dust and Dinner at 8 cemented her as the ultimate screen siren, a woman who could deliver a sharp one-liner as effortlessly as she could melt hearts with a single glance. But her influence didn't stop at the silver screen. Harlow's image set the blueprint for every blonde icon that followed, from Monroe to Madonna. Even Marilyn herself idolized Harlow, reportedly wanting to play her in a biopic that never came to fruition. Yet just as she was reaching the peak of her stardom, tragedy struck. In 1937, at only 26 years old, Harlow died suddenly from kidney failure, a shocking loss that left Hollywood reeling. Her death solidified her mythic status. Forever young, forever luminous, forever the original blonde bombshell. Today, her legacy lingers in every femme fatale who dares to own her power on screen. To understand the evolution of Hollywood glamour, you have to start with Jean Harlow. Lionel Hampton. Imagine a time when jazz was still finding its voice, when the sound of a vibraphone and a swing band was unheard of. Then came Lionel Hampton, a force of nature who took this shimmering instrument and made it sing. He wasn't just playing notes, he was electrifying audiences, turning the vibraphone into a jazz staple. His big break came in the 1930s when he joined Benny Goodman's orchestra, making history as part of one of the first racially integrated bands in America. But Hampton wasn't just a sideman. His boundless energy and rhythmic brilliance made him a star in his own right. Watching him perform was like witnessing a firework display set to music, each mallet strike igniting something new. His influence stretched far beyond his own era, inspiring musicians like Milt Jackson and Gary Burton, who carried his innovations into future generations. And Hampton didn't stop at performance. He dedicated himself to jazz education, ensuring that the next wave of musicians would carry the torch. Today, his legacy lives on in every vibraphone solo and every swing rhythm that still gets feet tapping. He wasn't just a musician, he was a revolution. Ramon Novarro. In the Roaring '20s, Ramon Novarro was one of Hollywood's brightest stars, often mentioned in the same breath as Rudolph Valentino. With his smoldering looks and undeniable charm, he became a matinee idol, reaching the peak of his fame with the epic Ben-Hur in 1925. Audiences adored him, but behind the scenes, Hollywood was far less kind. As an openly gay actor in an era of rigid moral codes, Novarro faced relentless pressure to conform. When the silent film era faded and talkies took over, his career waned, not because of a lack of talent, but because the industry had little room for someone who refused to hide his true self. His tragic murder in 1968 became tabloid fodder, overshadowing his legacy. But Novarro's contributions to early cinema remain undeniable. He was a pioneer, a leading man who captivated audiences worldwide, and a reminder of Hollywood's long history of sidelining those who didn't fit its narrow mold. Today, as the industry slowly embraces more diverse stories, Novarro's life stands as both a cautionary tale and a testament to resilience. Barbara Stanwyck. Long before Hollywood embraced the idea of strong, independent women on screen, Barbara Stanwyck was already redefining what female characters could be. Whether she was the cunning, dangerous Phyllis Dietrichson in Double Indemnity, or the fiercely determined mother in Stella Dallas, Stanwyck brought a raw intensity to every role. But her toughness wasn't just an act. She grew up in poverty, orphaned at a young age, and clawed her way from a Broadway chorus line to becoming one of Hollywood's highest-paid actresses. That kind of grit wasn't common in the Golden Age, especially for women. She wasn't just playing strong characters, she was living it. Her performances in film noir helped shape the femme fatale archetype, but unlike many of her contemporaries, she never played these roles as one-dimensional vamps. Instead, she gave them depth, intelligence, and a sense of agency that was groundbreaking for the time. Even today, you can see her influence in actresses who take on complex, powerful female roles. Think of Meryl Streep's commanding presence or Viola Davis's emotional depth. Stanwyck set the bar high, proving that women in Hollywood didn't have to be damsels in distress. They could be just as sharp, just as dangerous, and just as compelling as any leading man. John Garfield. In the 1930s and 40s, when Hollywood favored polished, theatrical performances, Garfield brought something raw and electric to the leading man role. His acting style, deeply influenced by the early method techniques, felt startlingly real. He wasn't reciting lines, he was living them. You can see his fingerprints all over the next generation of actors. Marlon Brando, James Dean, even Robert De Niro. But Garfield's refusal to play by Hollywood's rules came at a cost. During the McCarthy era, his name landed on the blacklist. Accused of communist ties, he vehemently denied. Studios turned their backs. Roles vanished. The industry he helped revolutionize cast him out. By the time he passed away at just 39, his career had been stolen from him. But his legacy? Untouchable. Today, his influence is undeniable in every actor who dares to bring authenticity to the screen. He was Hollywood's original rebel, and younger generations should know his name. Ethel Waters. Ethel Waters wasn't just a singer or an actress. She was a force that shattered barriers in an era when the entertainment industry was anything but welcoming to black performers. Born in the early 1900s, Waters rose from extreme poverty to become one of the first black women to achieve mainstream success in jazz, blues, and Broadway. Her voice carried more than melody. It carried history, resilience, and defiance. And in 1939, she made television history as the first black woman to headline her own show, The Ethel Waters Show. This was a time when black performers were often relegated to stereotypical roles, but Waters refused to be boxed in. She took on complex, nuanced roles in films like Cabin in the Sky and Pinky, challenging Hollywood's narrow portrayals of black life. But her influence didn't stop at the silver screen. Her unique blend of jazz and gospel laid the foundation for future icons like Aretha Franklin and Mahalia Jackson. Waters wasn't just a performer. She was a pioneer who demanded space in an industry that wasn't ready for her. And yet she made them ready. Her legacy isn't just in the songs she sang or the roles she played, but in the doors she kicked open for generations of black artists who followed. Sessue Hayakawa. During the Golden Age, Hollywood's brightest leading men were all cut from the same cloth. Square-jawed, all-American, and overwhelmingly white. Along came Sessue Hayakawa, a Japanese actor who shattered expectations and became one of the biggest silent film stars of the early 20th century. With his smoldering intensity and commanding presence, he didn't just play supporting roles. He was the leading man, drawing audiences into his magnetic performances in films like The Cheat in the mid-1910s. At his peak, he was one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood, earning a salary that rivaled Charlie Chaplin and Douglas Fairbanks. But despite his undeniable talent, the industry's deep-seated racism kept him from fully capitalizing on his success. Hollywood's refusal to cast him as a romantic lead opposite white actresses forced him to seek opportunities in Europe and Japan, where he continued to thrive. His legacy, however, was unstoppable. Decades later, his groundbreaking career paved the way for future Asian actors like Bruce Lee and Ken Watanabe, proving that representation matters, and that talent transcends borders. Sessue Hayakawa wasn't just a star, he was a trailblazer who redefined what a leading man could be. Jayne Mansfield. Before Marilyn Monroe, there was Jayne Mansfield, Hollywood's original blonde bombshell with a brain. Mansfield knew exactly how to play the game, staging publicity stunts that kept her in the public eye, from wardrobe malfunctions to over-the-top appearances that left audiences and photographers wanting more. But behind the platinum curls and hourglass figure was a woman of remarkable intelligence, reportedly boasting an IQ of 163. She spoke multiple languages, played the violin, and had a sharp business sense that made her one of the most recognizable figures of the 1950s. Yet, despite her charisma and comedic timing, Hollywood never fully figured out what to do with her. She was often compared to Monroe, but Mansfield leaned into the parody, embracing the camp and excess that made her unforgettable. Her films, like The Girl Can't Help It, showcased her comedic skills and undeniable screen presence, influencing generations of performers who followed. Even today, you can see her imprint in pop culture, from Madonna to Lady Gaga, stars who understand that image is power. Tragically, her life was cut short in a car accident in 1967, cementing her status as one of Hollywood's most mythologized figures. But Mansfield's legacy is more than just glamour and tragedy. She was a pioneer in shaping celebrity culture, proving that intelligence and self-awareness could be just as powerful as beauty. For younger generations who may not know her name, Jayne Mansfield was the blueprint for modern stardom. A woman who understood that fame wasn't just about talent. It was about owning the narrative. Theda Bara. Before femme fatales slinked across the silver screen in noir classics, there was Theda Bara, the original vamp who redefined female power in Hollywood. In the 1910s, she became an overnight sensation with her smoldering presence in A Fool There Was, where she played a heartless seductress who destroyed men with a mere glance. She wasn't just playing a role, she was crafting an entirely new archetype, one that challenged the era's demure leading ladies. Her dark eyes, heavy coal makeup, and hypnotic allure made her a cinematic enigma, and audiences were entranced. But fate had other plans. In 1937, a fire at Fox Studios destroyed nearly all of her films, leaving only fragments of her work behind. This tragic loss turned her into one of Hollywood's greatest mysteries, a legend whose influence still lingers in the DNA of every femme fatale that followed. From Barbara Stanwyck's icy cunning in Double Indemnity to Sharon Stone's dangerously seductive presence in Basic Instinct, Theda Bara's shadow stretches far beyond the silent era. She wasn't just a star, She was a revolution, proving that women on screen could be powerful, dangerous, and unforgettable. Harold Lloyd. Imagine hanging from the side of a skyscraper, gripping the hand of a giant clock as the city sprawls beneath you. That's Harold Lloyd in Safety Last from the early 1920s, one of the most daring and unforgettable images in film history. But what makes it even wilder? Lloyd wasn't just acting. He was actually performing these stunts himself without the safety nets modern filmmakers rely on. He was fearless, a silent-era daredevil who took comedy to death-defying heights. Alongside Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, Lloyd helped define silent film comedy, but his style was different. Less whimsical than Chaplin, less stone-faced than Keaton. He was the everyman, the underdog, the guy who would do anything to succeed, even if it meant dangling stories above the pavement. And he did it all despite a devastating accident in 1919, when a prop bomb exploded in his hand, costing him 2 fingers. Most actors would have retired. Lloyd doubled down, perfecting a technique to hide his injury and continuing to perform stunts that would make even today's action stars flinch. His influence is everywhere, from Jackie Chan's fearless physicality to Tom Cruise's insistence on doing his own stunts. Yet unlike Chaplin and Keaton, Lloyd's name isn't as widely remembered today. That needs to change. He wasn't just a comedian, he was a pioneer, proving that comedy and danger could exist in the same frame. Without him, action comedy as we know it might not exist. Pearl Bailey. Pearl Bailey had a voice so rich, so full of warmth and wit, that it could command both a smoky jazz club and the grandest Broadway stage. With a style that effortlessly blended jazz, blues, and Broadway, she carved out a space that was entirely her own. In 1968, she made history, winning a Tony Award for her dazzling performance in an all-black production of Hello, Dolly, a bold statement in an era still grappling with racial divides. But Bailey didn't just break barriers on stage. She charmed her way into the hearts of television audiences, becoming a fixture on talk shows, where her quick wit and magnetic personality made her a favorite of both Hollywood and the White House. Even beyond entertainment, she carried her influence into diplomacy, serving as a goodwill ambassador, using her voice not just for song, but for change. Her legacy? A reminder that talent, charisma, and sheer determination can open doors that once seemed locked. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.